military spending. It also should include, if it doesn't, such things as welfare, such things as, now Social Security is technically a separate entity, but because the federal government has borrowed so much money from Social Security.
Is that right?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Good.
I mean, I talked to a gentleman who's a CPA with the IRS. I've known him for years. He's been with the IRS over 5 years as a CPA, and he's talking about the interest alone. I think it's that we borrowed over $1 trillion from Social Security alone.
So does that mean when people who are going to be going on Social Security get there, it won't be there for them?
That's a good question, because basically what the federal government is doing is they're selling a lot of bonds to finance all these things. They're borrowing money, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, which is why we have the national debt and we have all the interest accumulated. So as long as the federal government is able to collect taxes and sell bonds, technically they will be able to pay the Social Security. The problem is that the government has borrowed so much money that our dollar is losing value abroad. So those bonds that we're selling, how far can you stretch the envelope? How far can you stretch that rubber band as far as borrowing until you can't do it anymore?
So does it mean that when they borrow from Peter and Paul really don't have enough money to borrow from?
No, but really,
do you
that's
understand
not,
what I mean?
I understand. When the government borrows money, it sells a bond.
Uh-huh.
If Peter and Paul don't have the money to buy a bond, they don't buy the bond.
Okay.
Okay, so Peter and Paul have the money. The problem is, when the bond matures, it comes with interest, and the federal government, so if they're selling a bond for $50, just to keep numbers simple, if it's a 5% bond, they have to pay $55 back. So it's not just free money.
So with the state of the economy right now, for those who think that the economy is in trouble,
Which it is.
what led us to that? what brought it to there? Because there are also others who think that the economy is fine,
They're
or that
clueless.
only 2% of the whole nation is losing their homes, or yeah, there is still a middle class, we just can't find it. So how did it get to here?
It got there because you have a lot of politicians who, when they get to office, are so obsessed with staying in power, and they're so insecure, and they need the attention that they're willing to give everybody anything they ask for, even though that they can't afford to pay for it. Okay?
Okay.
You have recently, and Bush did it, this prescription drug benefit that sounds wonderful and people really need it. And I know you have a father that's 85 that has health issues. I have health issues, okay? But where do we get the money to pay for that? We're already 9.6+ trillion in debt. The non-defense discretionary budget is over $400 billion a year, even under Bush's watch. That's money that has nothing to do with protecting the American people. It's just play money for the politicians. It's not really even listed in all those things. Like, it's not in the agricultural fund. It's not in the welfare fund. It's just extra money.
But how did it get there? If the Republicans say that the Democrats were party spenders under Clinton, then Bush came in. What happened between Clinton and now, through the Bush presidency, that brought us to this $9 trillion?
It's called the George W. Bush, who I voted for in 2 general elections, has not had the leadership or the backbone to say no. Now, when the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, Bush only vetoed 1 bill. That was over stem cell research, if memory serves me correctly. Every single spending bill that the Republicans sent him, he signed on to, including some that John McCain sent. Now, under Democratic leadership, he started to veto a few more bills. But basically, and they used the cover, regrettably, of 9/11 to justify this out-of-control spending. For a short period of time after 9/11, obviously people were frightened. The federal government had to step in there and spend money, but not 6 years after the event.
So now what do we do to fix it?
Stop spending money. Start paying off the debt. Possibly look at the regulations involving the... They say it's subprime lending, and that's certainly an issue, but these adjustable arms, as they're referred to, can happen to people that have excellent credit, just as it happens to people that have subprime credit. if the federal government is going to insure these loans, then they have to be tighter regulated. If I give you a quick example, what
Yes.
they were doing, because
Go
I
ahead.
used to be a loan officer,
Okay.
you could basically tell a lender how much money you made and just show them a few, not pay stubs, but just show them a few bank statements.
Mhm.
And if you had the credit, they'd give you the loan.
Mhm.
I mean,
So it's
that's
stated
insane.
income versus proof of income.
Right. Now, a full doc
Exactly.
loan,
Okay.
which is really the way to go,
Mhm.
and they were still generous on this, is where you give them your W-2s, you give them your full bank statement, a statement of your retirement, any investments that you have, your full credit report, and then they decide to make a.
So everything that anything that you say, I'm worth this, or I have this, or my assets are this, you give them full proof of that can be checked and double checked.
That's a full doc loan.
Whereas a lot of people, from what I understand, were doing what they call stated income, where you could be someone who, say you're a gardener, but you, instead of saying I'm a gardener and I make $20,000 a year, no, I have a landscaping company and I make $80,000 a year, and I do this business with my 3 sons and my little girl. And they just take that information without proving it really in any way and say, okay, this sounds like you're good, you're sound, and you want a home for your family and all of that. So here's what we're going to do for you.
They usually in a case like that require an income statement, which is basically just from a business that lists, your gross income, which is the total amount you make, and then all the expenses, and at the bottom it's the net income, which is basically the income that's left over after all the expenses. But they usually require that, but they were very lenient.
Extremely.
Extremely.
So we have the things that people are complaining about the most about the economy now is not being able to hold on to their homes, the price of gas, and even groceries. Everything seems to have gone up. So if we take each one of those things, how can a change in the White House change the status of those things? What would that new commander-in-chief, what would that new chief executive officer have to do in order to change things around in those 3 primary areas that are affecting everybody's life, no matter where on the socioeconomic scale they are?
Well, that's a great question, and I do have a great answer.
Let's start out with...
Well, let me address the question. Sadly, you see, people overrate the power of the presidency. Oh yeah, he's a powerful guy or gal. In this case, it's going to be a man because that's who's running unless McCain dies. But at any rate, he has control. He's the commander-in-chief of the United States military. That's powerful. He does not, however, have the power to tell somebody that has excellent credit that decides that I just want to have a 3 or a 5-year fixed loan. He doesn't have the power to tell that person, no, you can't afford this. They can
But does he have the power to affect the Congress in the legislation that they pass, which will trickle down and affect the person with the credit trying to get the loan?
To an effect, yes. But at some point in time, people have to take responsibility for the loans that they sign off to. Yes, they can regulate. How do you regulate somebody who has the income, has the credit, has a full doc loan? I've seen these clients before. Have FICO scores in the 700 range, which is spectacular. If they decide to go with a 3-year arm, knowing fully well at the end of 3 years it's going to adjust, how is the President of the Congress going to step in for somebody in that situation?
So when you were speaking earlier about taxes, some people say that the middle class has all but disappeared.
Okay.
In this last 8 years or so.
Okay.
And there's been criticism of Senator Obama because he allegedly says that he wants to tax only the people who make a lot of money, and he used a number. Whereas...
Top 5%.
And who make what? Over what amount of money?
I haven't heard him specify. I just heard 95% get a tax cut. The top 5%, he's gonna
tax them. So... is this even realistic to do? And on the other side,
pay off the debt, you mean?
The people who are more affluent, they don't want to be taxed more.
You mean, is it possible to give the middle class a tax break that Senator Obama?